Okay, maybe we can start. Yes. All right. So,
Okay.
Right.
here we are. Hello, everybody. We are very pleased. CTML Art is very pleased to invite you to this conversation on the topic of rights and care and well-being as expressed through the arts. And this is part of a series of talks that we are having once or twice per month. This is because we are convinced, we are sure that this nowadays discussing this issue is more urgent than ever, and the situation is quite clear in this sense. But of course, talking about care and well-being and the right to all this with artists is also having a very broad notion, talking about a very broad notion of well-being. And today we are going to delve in the work and in the world of Polish artist Agnieszka Brzeżańska. Agnieszka in her work analyzes the fluidity and the complexity of the culture and nature relationship and the interdependence of natural environment and society and also economy, culture, digital world we are living in. And she's interested in biology, in ecology, in alchemy, in feminist thinking or ecofeminism. This is only to mention some of her key concepts and interests. Her work is really extremely faceted and layered. And by the way, her work should be visible, is still visible somehow for some more days in a gallery in Milano, where we with NCTM we are based. In gallery is contemporary, and we thank the gallery for having facilitated this talk. So Brzezańska is going to discuss with Sebastian Cichocki, Chief Curator and Head of Research at the Museum of Modern Art of Warsaw, and we are really very pleased to have him present today. Cichocki curatorial practice is very attentive and sensitive to issues that are linked to the present, to history, but also to the consequences of history in the present, and also of ecological and anti-fascist movements. He curated exhibitions that are linked to this kind of worries, and he curated important exhibitions such as, just to mention one, Yael Bartana and Europe Will Be Stunned, the Polish Pavilion at the 54th Venice Biennale, which was a very special one because it was this Israeli artist who had worked for a very long time in Poland. So very, very interesting situation. I will leave to them because there is a lot to say about Agnieszka's work, and a lot to say starting from Agnieszka work and about what the world today. So please, Sebastian, maybe first.
Maybe
Yeah,
I will
absolutely.
pronounce Sebastian's name. It's Sebastian Cichocki. We have Cichocki.
Sorry.
Yes.
It's
It's not your fault. Our writing is tricky.
It is
very
tricky,
sorry.
but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's I can do easily with Cichocki. I'm used to it, especially like
I really don't care
Asian
how
circles.
how
I am Cichocki. So yeah.
I'm really sorry. I try to exercise, but and it's not the first time we meet. But still, and I love Poland. I've been there so many times. I feel familiar with it, but still, this is a problem for me. Sorry so much.
No worries. No worries. Actually, we should like conduct this interview in Polish. So when you invite like two Polish guests, that would be like the most natural. But yeah, we will try to stick to the Slavic kind of version of English. And yeah, first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's always pleasure to meet Agnieszka. We're supposed to meet for a tea this week, but
for ages.
For ages, actually, for ages. It will happen soon.
Very
So
true.
yeah, it's like a digital kind of equivalent of our meeting. I have my tea here. It's not that good as the one which is infused by Agnieszka, and I learned a lot from her about like brewing and infusing herbs and teas. So yeah, I will start with a kind of yeah, where to start? You know, there are so many things to touch upon, and I have to say I am not really like an expert when it comes to this science of care. Agnieszka is, but I will try. You know, like this is not the first kind of connection and connotation. When you say care, I don't think about art institutions. You know, like I think about kindergartens and community centers, maybe anarchist squads, but not necessarily museums. But we'll touch it upon later. So I was thinking about like a kind of starting point for as a trigger for our discussion, and so let me maybe come back to like the memories of summer 2020, the grim year. It's not like this one is not kind of more kind of promising, but yeah. But we had this like kind of like an window, like this window opening in this pandemic period. I mean the Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw, and we had a show. We had a show which was hibernated for a few months with Agnieszka's work inside. You know, for like 2 months, it was like trapped with dozens of other pieces from like all over the planet, and yeah, like ironically, it was a show dedicated to kind of planetary crisis. You know, so we're like supposed to open it in March, but instead of like opening a show, we closed down the country, and you know, following the like examples of other places on the planet. So we had a show which was kind of. I know it might sound a little bit dry and kind of publicistic, but we were kind of investigating the kind of cooperations and like joint activities of artist groups and environmental activists like since the like late 60s. So it was like a very heavy show, you know, of like almost like 100 participants and a lot of like, you know, documentations and moving images. But in the end, the show, when we opened it, was quite enigmatic and quite poetic. You know, it's like Agnieszka brewing her tea, you know, like those big slabs of like this fermented tea, you know, like, so I had this feeling that, you know, like the show kind of fermented, or like our brains fermented, I don't know, you know, in the meantime. And we had a work from Agnieszka, which you can see in Milano, right? According to the documentation, the fabric piece from the Vistula River, the one which was kind of dragged in the water. So we displayed it quite prominently, so to speak. You know, like it was quite high, you know, like super high, like 10-meter high, and it was kind of confronted with some works which were dealing with water, or like water protection issues. So I would start with like a little story, you know, like what was like being kind of shadowed by Agnieszka's piece, and I think it might be like a kind of trigger for our discussion. I wouldn't start with her, I would start with death, you know, so maybe death is like an entry point, you know, for us. We had a little photo next to the big Agnieszka fabric with a group of Japanese monks. The photograph was taken in 1970, and it's depicted a very kind of mysterious activity of a group of monks who decided to leave, to abandon the monastery and pray in front of factories, like in Japan. So they took this pilgrimage to different factories, and they used those old protocols, like old prayers, very old, like 9th century. They're like the mantras of death. So they were like camping in front of factories and praying for the death of the director of the factory. That was their aim. You know, they had those seashell kind of instruments. They played some songs and they prayed, bringing the spirits of death. The reason for such a kind of I would say militant activity was the pollution of the river, and like you know, there were like a number of factories who polluted Japanese rivers so badly in the 1970s that they generated like 2 pandemics, like this Minamata disease and this Ita disease, which are connected to lungs again, you know, like it's like this lungs disease and again breathing kind of problems and so on. So the monks decided to leave the monastery and kind of do their job, you know, like performing those incantations of death. So yeah, I would start in a very kind of universal way, you know, like bringing this image of those spiritual beings sending the forces of death to capitalism, you know, to those capitalist fortresses. And as Agnieszka have quite a reputation for depicting those, you know, images of catastrophe, apocalypse, you know, calamities. Yeah, you are quite a dark prophet, I have to say, you know. And so I would ask you, like in a very general, like opening of the discussion, you know, like where are we as a species, as Homo sapiens, you know, like in this timeline, you know, what are your feelings? You have like very good apparatus for like telling us.
You know, killing is very tempting, you know, sometimes when we are in a despair. But well, maybe let's think about the dog which kills or something like that. Because, well, then maybe we can discuss about this later, but you mentioned this apocalypse. It was ages ago when I did a research on the end of the world. I did it at residency.
Agnieszka, there is a problem with the line, I'm afraid.
With the sound.
Agnieszka?
It seems to work quite well, I guess. I can hear Agnieszka very well. It feels,
okay.
Gabi, that
So
you keeps disappearing. So Agnieszka is fine. I can hear her.
Agnieszka?
Yes.
Well,
it's.
I think we didn't hear very well.
Okay.
Okay, I'm afraid we couldn't hear. Maybe you can go back to it.
Okay, so Sebastian mentioned a project which I did. It was, I think, 2004, and it's called Freedom. I had a research grant from ETH in Zurich and at Collegium Helveticum, where I had was invited to make a work involving the scientists from ETH, which is one of the most important science institution in the world. So I went to interview the scientist and also get into a research on the end of the world, on all the calamities which can be catastrophic for our species and the Earth. So I interviewed a lot of scientists, and surprisingly to me, they were very optimistic in all sense. Like one mathematician who was making the economical models told me that the economical system is so sound that he's not predicting any major events in the near future. And it was 2004, and 2007 was just around the corner. So so then I made a series of works and published a book, which I think is still available at the hub. And then I went in that I went into mostly things like sixth extinction and man-made disasters, and I made a series of paintings, and then I did an exhibition with that. And this brought me to a point when I saturated myself with all the visions of these disasters and hopelessness, and that I sort of, you know, this feeling of total despair when you learn what's going on, really.
Yeah.
So then at that moment, I decided to move on from that and find a way how to work with that, what to do about it, how to go on. So I think and since then I started to make works which are quite affirmative and playful to counterbalance that, but also all the time like bringing up all these issues, because it's once you learn, it's not possible to unlearn that.
And is it helpful kind of to make kind of affirmative, positive, optimistic works? You know, does it help you, or like people who are around you?
You know, I mean, it's not about art, but it's also how our neurology works. That if we activate these parts of our consciousness, of our mind, of brains, which are related with survival and fear, we cannot really think, right? We are just programmed, and we are reactive. We cannot be creative. So I think that, and also that the main source of creativity and access to creativity is through joy and and also access to life and access to all the resources we have to influence the reality. Otherwise, if we don't tap to these sources and to this knowledge, we are perpetuating these human disasters.
Because
within ourselves, because it's ecology. We can think about ecology in terms of nature, but it's our mental ecology also, or our ecology of our workplace, or ecology of our gut. We have to work with all the systems, which are not, we are not isolated beings. That's an illusion on many different layers.
I'm very glad you kind of used this quite ambiguous term of ecology and ecological. You know, it's quite a striking difference when you look. I will try to stick to art, you know, for a moment, but of course we know it's a kind of broader thing. But I also think like art is much broader term when we usually think looking at objects, at those kind of mute things in museums. And you know, basically, you know, when we talk to like artists who deal with ecology or ecologies, and there are kind of like two categories, you know, like people who do art, kind of ecological art, and people who do art ecologically. You know, I think there are like two different things. You know, it's you know, ecological art, like this kind of eco art, is a very well kind of calibrated, refined term of like plethora of artistic practices about ecology and the planet and the climate crisis. It might be really harmful to the environment. You know, sometimes, you know, like when you imagine all those, you know, installations with tons of plastic, you know, used for raising up the awareness of the visitors, and, you know, like those, you know, the like all those processes which are happening at the bottom of our oceans, for example. But then you have like, you know, artists who are trying to kind of implement this ecological thinking into the practice. And I think you are quite one of the examples, I guess. And that's why, you know, like this division between art and non-art and art and life is kind of secondary for me, because this is something, yeah, this is something which Timothy Morton kind of pinned down quite eloquently, you know, like writing, I guess it's also like a title of his new book, or All Art is Ecological, you know, and he tries to kind of hammer this message for many years that, you know, it's the way you think, the way you do things, you know, it's not about what is it about, but the way you do them, you know. And so yeah, what would it mean for you, you know, like to do art ecologically? What would be this kind of spirit which needs to be like activated, you know? What should we do basically?
You know, it's I started to think about ecology, I think, very early, because I was in high school, and it was kind of exotic interest for most of people when I became vegetarian or vegan. And it was like 5 years before I met anyone like that, but I was reading them. There were some papers, and you would hear about it. And it has a lot of phases of discovery, because how I understood it then, and how we also, our knowledge as human beings developed in this time, and until now, we can understand it differently. But I think that's very important what Morton said, because it's really, ecology is not like thinking about doing good for the environment. Ecology is everything. It's the situation we're in. the power forces which are involved. So we are not the only participants. Like me, I'm not like we are trained to see ourselves as separated individuals, but we now know how that we are like different chimeras. There's so many beings within me, which are part of me and which are talking also through me. And also like our personalities or our minds are not separated from the culture and from the environment. And the air we breathe, we are not, we are like in this huge ocean of beings which are in milliards in every square centimeters. We breathe in, breathe out, we share. It's not, we cannot separate it from we cannot separate ourselves from the environment. And the epidemic of the diseases, and I'm not talking about this one, but like general these diseases humanity suffers now, like depression, for example, or allergies. We are suffering them together with our environment. We suffer the effects of our involvement, of our relationship with the other beings on the earth, with ourselves, with our other fellow human beings, and problems in these relationships. They sometimes express themselves as our disease. And so each of us is a point where the state of the world is felt and experienced and also produced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say it's quite a kind of liberating feeling when you recognize even a mining heap as a part of the nature, yeah, as a part of this ecology, you know, like it's it doesn't differ so much from an anthill, you know, like it's like a structure, it's made by humans, but yeah, we are like mammals, we are animals, we are a part of this kind of bigger kind of system, like organic system and non-organic system. And I would come back to this kind of notion of like fighting back this kind of climate depression and this like apocalyptic, you know, kind of over kind of surplus of all those like data, you know, which is kind of, you know, hunting us at night, you know, like all those images of like, you know, hungry polar bears and dead birds full of plastic and melting icebergs, you know, like it's kind of like a constant way of being like tortured, you know, by those images. And you said something about like kind of feeding your mind with something which might grow and like feed your kind of inner optimism. It's like kind of fighting back this kind of impotence, you know, like this kind of impossibility to overcome this crisis. And you said something about like science, but I have to kind of defend also like those artistic tools, this artistic apparatus, because I guess it's also a part of science, you know, like I was at a certain point, I was very much fascinated by the work by this Canadian cognitivist Alva Noe, who wrote this quite a fantastic book about art as a tool. You know, it was titled Strange Tools. You know, so he was writing about our like toolboxes. You know, we are humans, we have our toolboxes, it's full of stuff, you know, we have like spoons and screwdrivers and art installations and paintings and hammers, you know, like, so it's, and scissors. So it's you can use it, you know, like you can use it for different like kind of purposes, and you can repurpose it. You can like misuse it also. You know, like you can use a hammer for like eating your dinner, and you can use an artwork for like fighting political battles. And there is something about like this, yeah, also about like mental kind of health. You know, the art as a tool for kind of as a kind of healing kind of device. Just like the sheer exposure to things which we don't understand, it's kind of good for our minds. Yeah, it's like we are trained to be kind of stupefied. You know, like. You know, all those like narratives, you know, when you know where things end and start, you know, like it's very like quite a rigid division, you know, between natural and not natural, you know, like it's between narrative and non-narrative, you know. People are really getting paranoid when they see an abstract painting and they don't know what is the narrative, yeah, like what is the who painted it, you know, like is Agnieszka male or female, you know, like when she was born, you know, like is she like really an ecological artist, and so on and so on. Does she live in Japan or like Poland, you know, like so people are really craving for those, like for the data, you know. And
I do
yeah.
my best not to feed that.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm really
totally.
against that, because I think art is a wonderful opportunity to, you know, the real knowledge we have is through feeling and through experience. And feeling is actually where we, when we do the real thinking.
Yeah, this like, absolutely.
And
I'm
also,
totally, yeah.
yeah, it's also like spectator sport and doing sports. But with art, it's I don't know. It's that first of all, right now we have a lot of art which gives chances to participate, but also like with the most static of all arts, it's painting. It's amazing how with watching the same paintings we can observe our mind, how it changes. And I'm especially about painting, I really don't like any interpretation, because I mean, I love interpretation, but through many different facets, like everyone, like I love to know how everyone sees that, but there's no one view and there's no right explanation, and it's just an opportunity to do your own research, which for me, like doing research is the most exciting. And I unfortunately afraid that our schooling system deprived most of people of feeling the joy of it. But
Absolutely.
I do believe in good schools, and I do believe that if kids are not trained not to be creative, they continue to be creative. And it's available to everyone all the time, like meditation or going to nature or going to art gallery. It's
yeah, absolutely. It's like, you know, it's like this thing with looking at natural phenomena, you know, like when you look at this beautifully shaped cloud, you don't ask who did it, you know, like what does it mean, you know, like you don't need those information, you know. So I guess this is something also about like really trained to follow this kind of, yeah, like Western kind of model of like, you know, interpreting thing, which might be quite an obstacle. But I would come back to this kind of yeah, science of use, you know, like what might be the use of art. And you know, it's this kind of way of not understanding. It's also very useful, you know, like even for your kind of cognitive skills and keeping you kind of sane, especially now, you know, like it's we are kind of immobilized, like trapped in our houses, and we do stupid things. We try to kind of disconnect ourselves from the screen and try, like this whole thing about like walking, like strolling around, like people do it, like I walk to the office like every day. It's like 70 minutes, like I've never done it in my life, like I would consider it as a waste of time, but it's like the best part of the
Which
day.
is totally not, right?
This is not. Yeah, absolutely. Like I totally like deliver like new kind of, text and so on. They are kind of forming and fermenting and distilling, and it's the best time. It's also like the way, yeah, it's just for your like also like physical health. It helps, like not to be glued to your chair, So, but yeah, so like this also like this kind of whole way of like moving around now and looking at things, even contemplating them. I know it's a kind of reactionary term, but contemplating things, it's quite.
Contemplation should be, yeah. Maybe we should. Maybe now it's called something else, but also
Yeah.
I don't like these terms. But I think it's extremely important, and we are just trained not to give us these spaces, and we suffer greatly after with consequences.
Yeah. And I started to think about like one particular work by you. I don't know if it's like an artwork or just a work, thinking about like uses of art and uses of or misuses of art. I'm thinking about this support which you built in front of Królikarnia, which is the branch of this Polish Warsaw National Museum. Agnieszka has built like a kind of like a support for a branch for a tree, which was later kind of enlisted as one of your artworks. So what is it like? How would you like explain the function of the thing and status of it?
Oh, I was visiting Królikarnia, and I learned from a curator that they're going to cut the branches of the tree in front of it, and I was just despaired, because this is such a beautiful apple tree. And I talked to them, and I said that, well, in Japan you don't do that. You just make a like support for the branches, and it's fine, and the tree doesn't have to be cut. It can be supported, and it's not dangerous, and it's safe for the tree. And then I brought a lot of photos of it from my visit to Japan, and we, with the team from the museum, we made it a support, and yes, this is this kind of work, not work. I don't know how to treat it. I mean, I'm not into labeling things that much, so I don't care. I'm just happy it's there, but also I think it's a nice work. I mean, I'm super happy that it happened and that I had a possibility as an artist, because if I was not an artist, probably I would not be able to do that. It's a sculpture museum, so it's a sculptural form, and
It is.
and I like the things which are actually doing something, and they also are art. It's this kind of territory which sometimes is tricky, but it's because it's the art historian recently was very male oriented, and male people are not into carrying or these blurred boundaries, or they like this the women works, and so it was not really treated. We all know it from art history how it was pushed into the territory of the artisans and or women's work, but I think now it's you know, it's also not wasteful. It's
Yeah,
just
happily
I
we have,
always
yeah.
like to things to reuse, and I remember times when I felt kind of bad about it, because I felt that I'm not like ambitious enough, and I'm not this artist which are making these big projects with these big budgets, and I will never and probably I do something wrong because it's not I don't know, these more humble things are more humble. They just don't, not so big, not so expensive.
No, I'm like really excited about like this intervention, and I treat it like one of your best works. Actually, I really admire it. I always like visit it when I am at Rilanciare. It's something about also like using the kind of loopholes, you know. It's the whole like legal kind of aspect of like creating an artwork, you know, like you being an artist, you know, working in a sculpture museum, you know, adding this thing which is kind of legalized because you are an artist. Then it's like entering your kind of catalog with a title, or like it's untitled, but it's there. It's like it has a label. I remember we had a guest, we had this theorist, Stephen Wright, who gave a talk at Królikarnia, and he's known, he's also like, I think you're like this kind of the same spirits, like he kind of left the territory of art theory and became a farmer, and I kind of like lost him. Like, you know, I don't know what he's doing now. Like he cultivates something, but he wrote this book about like kind of usership, the use value of art, and I remember us like, you know, like attending this lecture, you know, in the winter time, and it was like a lengthy, you know, very beautiful lecture about, you know, art and being applied in other kind of areas of human kind of like knowledge and non-knowledge, and art in you know, as a prosthesis, and art as you know, educational apparatus, art as a protest prop, you know, like being adopted by some like feminist, LGBTQ, ecological movements, and you know, used for kind of medical kind of purposes and so on. And then we just went out and we saw your support, you know, like in the tree, and we started to talk about it. It was like one of the most beautiful like illustrations for this lecture. Yeah, this is the use of art, and this is this and that, you know, like I really like this kind of ambiguity in art, you know, when you, it's like I you know, I have this mascot, like kind of, you know, imaginary mascot, which is the rabbit duck figure, you know, like this Wittgenstein's favorite illustration. You can see the rabbit, you can see the duck, you know, like it depends on your mood, it depends on your, I don't know, education, or maybe just like I don't know, ingredients which you had for your dinner, you know, like, and the more so you can easily learn yourself to switch from duck to rabbit whenever you wish. So this is something which also applies to your support, to your tree support, you know, like you can see art, you can see non-art, but first of all, the more so you can see not art, you know, it's like, you know, something which is very kind of fluid. And I think that's what Gabi introduced you and your practice as a kind of artist who deals with fluidity. It's also about like the definitions, you know, the norms, you know. I have no idea if like drinking tea with you is a part of like your kind of performative practice, or is like just drinking tea. I don't care, you know, tea is good, you know, like, so it's the same about art. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I would also like jump from this.
No, I treat art mostly as an excuse to interact with people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't. Yeah, it's like the most comfortable way of meeting people or sharing something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Yeah, so this is like the real value of art, you know, like me. I remember like
I think I always thought about artworks as like, you know, like crumbles, leftovers from the process of what we are involved, like little crumbles which are actually left from it.
Actually, this is what we might be left with, you know, like after this kind of pandemic situation, just crumbles. You know, we'll be just picking those crumbles and kind of enjoying them, you know, like being really trained to look at things, you know, because when we like walk, you know, every day, when we look at crumbles, it might be like completely new thing, which leads us to the other term, apart from this kind of usology and care, which is also kind of like a.
But yeah, but about usology, I quite don't like thinking about art in utilitarian terms. I think it's degrading. It just takes the miracle out of it. Art should not be utilitarian. I mean, not so much as some people would wish to.
I am, you know, like this is like, you know, you are talking to a propaganda curator. I am like advocating for propaganda, you know, so I will be always.
Propaganda. And propaganda does not have much joy in it, right?
Oh,
Joy
because
is
we are like
some
the
real
victims.
change.
We are the victims of like the 20th century totalitarianism, and so that's why we kind of confuse propaganda with like this, you know, like communist and fascist propaganda with something which was much older. You know, like this is like this. When you think about like this Latin term, you know, like propagare, you know, like it's about cultivation. It's actually it was like a skill.
Romans were excellent at it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like this, the Vatican, you know, they created the first kind of office for propaganda, which was actually like, you know, bringing the like Catholic faith to the non-believers, you know. So yeah, it's but I guess, you know, like it's I'm thinking about like the, you know, the strength of you know, feminist propaganda, you know, like, you know, climate propaganda, you know, like anti-fascist propaganda, you know. So not think, and I think what how you can like kind of differentiate bad propaganda from good propaganda is the good propaganda is equipped with sense of humor. You know, this is like this little tiny ingredient, you know, like that you can. Actually, when you look at
then it's not propaganda anymore. It gets kind of, you know, the missionaries, they don't like it.
We should just, you know, like I guess we should kind of take back some parts of the vocabulary, you know, like those words that were kind of, they were good words, you know, like in the, you know, propagate something, you know, like to propagate something, it's a good thing, you know, propagate like care, for example, you know, and when you even see the current protests in Poland, you know, like this is like a very humorous wave of propaganda sometimes, you know, like with all those banners and super absurd slogans. But I would like to, because I know we are kind of like, we don't have like hours for our conversation. I would like to touch upon the other term, putting aside the propaganda discussion and coming back to more like kind of environmental issues, which are quite present in a very sometimes like hidden way. I would talk about this term of rewilding, which is something which some of younger generation of like artists and climate activists are kind of bringing back. But this is the term which you used you have been using it for like many years, and I would just like to use this opportunity and ask you about like your understanding of this term. What the rewilding might mean to us, to humans, but also maybe to the art system and to the planet, of course.
Well, like the most important is to keep wild nature wild. Mm-hmm. And so it's not an art problem. It's like whole humanity, civilization problem, to keep as much of wild nature as we possibly can, and rewild as much of a land we can. And it should bring changes in agriculture and in a lot of layers, but rewilding is in terms of art. It's you know, I'm not a theoretician, so I just feel that we just need to spend more time with ourselves and in contact in nature, in whatever form, and that is good enough. It's not a big effort. It just matter of focusing attention. It's enough to look closely at the plants and just give it time and stay with it, listen and watch and stay with nature, and start to consider the other living beings on our planet as participants in the world, not as objects.
Yeah, I guess
and
it might be
staying with it and observing it should give everyone like personal access to understanding that these are living beings which are reacting to you and which can teach you, and which are conscious of you, and we are in all the time in interaction with them, that they are very active participants. So I would think about shifting the public imagination into considering the world as being alive in totality. And seeing us as like part of this continuum, not as separated from it.
Mm-hmm. No, I guess it might be applied also to the way, you know, art institutions operate, you know, because this art system, which is a very kind of like a 19th century kind of model of which is based also on this, you know, notion of like progress and modernization and classification. It's not really wild, you know, like speaking about it, like you know, about like the regimes, like the disciplines.
For most people, it doesn't have a good connotation to be wild, right?
Yeah. This is again like a word which has those like pejorative connotations, which we should kind of save, rescue for us. But I can think on a very kind of down to earth, in both senses, down to earth, you know, like meaning of the practice. I can see like many artists who are really kind of migrating from art to kind of like gardening, agriculture, kind of, you know, cultivation thing. When you know, like, I don't know if it struck you sometimes the Polish kind of way of talking, the speaking about art, like this phrase uprawiać sztukę, to cultivate art, you know, to uprawiać is to cultivate, you know, like in other languages, people do art, made art, like make art. We cultivate. Cultivating is for like soil, you know, like veggies, you know, like, and cultivation is a very special way of doing things. it's like this daily kind of routine and like a kind of even like boring, repetitive kind of you know,
Yeah, it's a
activity.
process. It's not
It's a
fixed in one
process.
point, but it's a process of growing together.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, like when you think about like really like, can we like cultivate art, you know, like growing together?
We cultivate
you know?
art because, you know, cultivation is not wild.
Mm-hmm.
It's you see, it's wild is like free. And I, for example, I cannot be a gardener. I can't. I mean, I'm not a gardener. But I discovered that, and I was quite disappointed. But then I discovered that there's so many white plants, and I started to gather white plants and to understand the white plants, and they master a lot of little small plants which are growing everywhere where humans are. They actually very powerful and very very good healers. And
but that would mean like, but to survive on those like wild plants.
I'm not talking about feeding yourself calories, because in our climate, with much less people than we are and with much more wildlife, we would have to hunt. I mean, in our climate, there's no way to feed yourself from plants. But for healing purposes, it's totally easy, and it's not these big quantities, and there's a lot around us. So I started there. I discovered that the best plants are wild growing. You know, also like the best animals are wild living. And then, you know, you don't have a cultivation there. You have at best of human potential, you can be a very active and positive participant in that. Like in forest permaculture, you can enrich the biotope. You can introduce you can speed up the biodiversity process. You can bring up a lot of nutritious plants for all other participants and share it with all the beings which live there. And then you are a sort of steward, and it's a stewardship of nature. It's not husbandry or cultivation, which is always human dominated process, but like supporting the ecosystem in producing what is needed in abundance. And that's theoretically that's very possible, but we have to
we would have to like reduce the population first, yeah. Which is
I think we have very good chances of it, because with the pollutants we introduced and into the environment from the plastic, for example, it's tiny part of the whole big thing. The potential of human reproduction is in danger. I mean, in few populations, probably we will not be really fertile. Also, this
I was like pretty surprised by it, but according to some like recent like scientific data, it's like we won't be able to breed in 2050.
Yes.
So like this whole thing about like, you know, facing this apocalyptic stage of like not being able to feed like this whole population, which is growing so rapidly, would be just over, you know.
And also the same with soil. The soil will not be fertile in about 60 harvests, because we're losing soil on massive scale because of the agricultural practices and because of the deforestation, and it will not come back that easily. So, well, it's like that. So
I have to say, you like came back as a dark prophet, Agnieszka. Like, you know,
well,
so we have.
It's
like,
not prophecy, unfortunately, but I think
it's science. I know it's there. It's there. but you try to kind of feed us with some kind of like optimistic
because we
notes.
totally can turn it around. It's you know, it's in the in the mind process of consciousness process of the whole world. And I will believe it has full potential of happening, but how to bring it about, let's try.
Okay, fantastic. We have like 1 hour, so it's done. So maybe Gabi wants to like, I don't know, join us, or like maybe you can like pose any like extra questions to us. Gabi, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
At the end, it was me who had some problems with the line. Anyway, yes, it's quite mind-blowing, this question of environmental crisis, which is going so fast. And I think what is interesting is what that this, like Agnieszka's way of looking at things, it's encouraging a new thinking. So yes, on the one side it's very troubling, but on the other side it's really pushing to think about the limits we have, but also about the potentialities. If we restart thinking of our place on Earth as part of a very more active environment with active subjects, many active subjects. This is really an important role, making you think. There's another side of her work that I find very interesting. It's the attention to femininity, and which is a kind of eco-feminism, I would say. And I think this is very important. This pushes us to think about the social side. And by the way, this has a very strong link with what is happening today in many parts of the world, in Poland also. I think, but so maybe we could, before closing this talk, we could mention this subject too. Could you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Do you think there's something you can say about this?
I think that the biggest potential in the world change are with women, as it always have been, because these are women who are actually creating life and sustaining reality with all the daily work. And they are the biggest defenders of wildlife and of life on Earth. Like this tree huggers movement, which saved so many trees in India. And the work of Vandana Shiva from India, and also like the examples of the microfinancing projects, which are giving cheap loans to women, and they are able to regenerate whole communities. So I think the most important part is in educating women and supporting women and giving them more voice. Definitely the world would be much better guided, not ruled.
Yes, guided and not ruled. And in fact, you go back
to your supported.
Work. Sorry?
Nourished, supported.
Yeah. And then, and in fact, you go back in your work. You go back to ancestral practices, and informs also the works you are showing. for instance, in the exhibition in Milano, but not only, of course, the vases and all this is very linked to really to ancestral, to archaeological, so you go from the very past, very to the from the past and the primordial to the future somehow. I think this link is very strong in your work, between the forces of nature, the primordial forces of nature also, and the future through a maternal line.
Well, I was thinking that the maternal line of my ancestry is going to end with me.
Wow.
And I have, I'm very thankful to all this line, because when you look deep into it, like inside your feeling, because we have no sources. My ancestors were peasants, so we don't have any genealogy to follow. So my knowledge about them is very limited. But it's generations of women who I feel are also supporting me somehow.
Yeah, this is very interesting. You have the feeling that all these generations, and they are taking a form in your work somehow. Yes,
I hope so. So the effort is not wasted.
it's a very very strong feeling that we have in front of your work, and and I have the impression that this is maybe there is what is happening today in some countries with this in the reality of the political scene is also can also be mentioned very synthetically.
Do you mean what we are experiencing now in Poland?
For instance, but not only in Poland, but yes, also. Do you think it has something to do with what all we have mentioned today?
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe as a kind of one of the final conclusions, we can like kind of link those threads, and connect them, to intertwine them even, like it's the political tension now. It's not only Poland, it's like kind of global thing, global kind of struggle. The reproduction rights, like this is the center of the kind of, discussion about like, democracy, and also it's related to the way we think about like the future of culture and like our kind of duties, kind of civic duties as art workers. And then I guess when you look at the the mobilization of the pro-choice movement, like globally, you can see a certain like a pattern, and you can see also like how different like quite victorious campaigns were won, with the engagement of very strong women, like the Irish case is incredible, for example, with this artist campaign to repeal the 8th Amendment, with Rachel Fallon and all those like really fierce feminist artists and activists, like they kind of like it's because of them, like the struggle kind of materialized, like they produced those images, those banners and aprons and flags and symbols, and this is I totally agree with Agnieszka, and this is like you know, the future should be female, you know, like it might be supported by some like gender fluid men, you know, like
No,
but
normal men are totally.
I don't know, I don't care. I'm not like really into like men.
A female element needs a support of healthy
Of
masculinity.
course, yeah. I don't know. I would live without it, you know. So, but this is, yeah, this political thing. It's also like very much connected to the kind of ecological struggle. You know, I mean it like in a very kind of also like kind of technical sense. You know, when you see the Polish protests, Polish, you know, like occupations and blockades, barricades. It's always connected to activists from the Extinction Rebellion, for example. You know, like those two groups, like the pro-choice movement and this ecological movement, they are like the same people, and quite often they are the same people, and quite often they are like fine arts academy students. You know? So this is like super promising, you know, and those really courageous young women, they really use a lot of like artistic tools, and I think this way of kind of triggering the imagination, doing stupid things, crazy things, like, you know, like one Extinction Rebellion activist glued herself to the facade of the Ministry of Education with this like, you know, super like strong glue. So she had to be kind of like cut off from the facade, you know, like, it's like, who does it? You know, like only like the most like courageous, fiercest fighters, you know. So yeah.
But the real work is in daily life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Protests are protests, but real work is being done quietly, you know, with everything we do.
Yeah, sometimes we also like need some like powerful images, you know, which are created by the artist, you know, so to kind of visualize what is happening. You know, this is what the whole like climate crisis is about also, you know, like scientists cannot provide like really convincing images, you know, like exposing people to those like starving polar bears images doesn't do the job. You know, like it's or like statistics and you know, those like raising bars of the, you know, methane emission. You know, it's it makes me only sad, you know, like, and frustrated. You know, it doesn't really encourage you to act. So, but when we look at
still, a lot of scientists are great activists, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Right?
Yeah, of course, yeah,
amazing solution, climate solutions.
Yes.
And there's a lot of scientists who are doing amazing jobs, and they also collaborate with artists. And
that's a fantastic thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic thing,
allies.
yes.
I think, you know, like if we all ally, you know, like the herbalists, bakers, you know, like the artists, you know, like, I don't know, doctors and scientists and like witches, you know, like for like this, like the kind of focus on healing the planet, that would be this victorious moment, you know. Using our tools, you know, like it's...
Yeah, but you know, the healing the planet has to start with everyone oneself, within them oneself, right? You start healing an environment with healing yourself, because if you jump into healing others and not being healed oneself, you will just spread what you carry within you.
Yeah.
And unconsciously, of course, and the shadow will grab you back. And
yeah, this is like the RuPaul Drag Race motto. Yeah, if you cannot love yourself, how the hell you can love somebody else? You know, like it starts with like love of yourself. You know.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are like kind of reach the limits, like the time limits.
Yeah, time limits with this critical and fertile creative imagination and potentialities to for art, but also to act in reality and rethink our coexistence with the world. So thank you very much, and
Thank you, Gabi.
I hope we can stay in touch. I hope it was interesting. Thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation. Bye. Stay safe. Bye.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Ciao.